I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Truth About Addiction. Today, I have a special friend on the program, a guy I've known since my first days of early recovery. In 1981, I went to a long-term rehab, and Robert was there as a young fella, and I'll let you tell Robert's story, but Robert's very inspirational. I've been hassling him to get him on this podcast for I have a couple of motives. One, because I respect his recovery. Two, because he got clean really, really young. And I have a lot of people go to me, "Oh, I'm so young." Robert got clean really young, and he stayed clean for a long, long time. So here's Robert, and we'll keep talking about other stuff. But right now, thank you for the welcome to The Truth About Addiction. Thanks for coming on, Rob.
Mate, thank you for asking me. Hey.
No, my pleasure, mate.
So yeah, when 1980, I went into the little house on the prairie down in Goulburn, and it was probably the last place you'd want to be. It was the last place anyone would want to be, really. But going back to the start, I guess my drug using is a little unusual. My drug using started when I was a baby in arms. My auntie told me only 10 years ago that my mother used to break off a quarter of a Valium and stick it in the milk and put me to bed, and then I'd sleep for hours or whatever, unlike her kids that were always screaming and whatever. So Mum used to break off a little tiny bit of the Valium and stick it in the milk, crush it up, whatever, stick it in the milk. I'd drink it and happy days. So, when I first started using the stuff, when I first started drinking and using stuff, it was just like, I felt right back at home again. It was just like, just like mother's milk, except it was out of the bottle. My old man was an alcoholic, and his father before him was an alcoholic. They were part of the family. There was a mad dentist in Paddington, and he was an alcoholic, and he was the uncle or something. So, my earliest memories of my grandfather, he couldn't string a word together. He sat in the dark corner in his little house in Waverley, and all he did was yell and scream and make noises. And, whenever we were going over to visit my grandparents, I knew that I was going to have to, face the demon down the back there in the dark room, because you had to walk past him to get into the rest of the joint. So anyway, family history, alcohol addiction, drug addiction. I had a fairly difficult childhood. I mean, most of us had a difficult childhood, so I'm not banging on about it. But I went 13 different primary schools from memory, so I never ever learned in my life how to have relationships with people. All I knew was you get in, you take what you can, because in 6 months' time it's time to move, and then you're going to be leaving anyway. So everything I did was focused on me, and I was selfish. I didn't know until after I was 18 years old and I went into the little house on the prairie. I didn't know that you could do such a thing in a relationship where you can go back and say, "Listen, I'm really sorry, and I messed that up, and I've hurt your feelings or whatever, and I'm really sorry. I won't be doing that." I didn't know you could do any of that. I thought once you reach the point where you damage the relationship, or you damage the friendship so much, that was it. It was cut right. It was over. You're never going to talk to them again. And that was the story of my life, right up until the age of 18. And then I had to learn new ways. I wasn't using anymore at the age of 18. I used to go to school tripping. We had mushrooms. I was in Queensland. I'd take mushrooms. I'd go to school, and there was a teacher who'd get me aside, and she'd know what was going on, and she kind of took care of me a little bit. She used to take the cigarettes off me in the morning when she found me walking around with the cigarettes, and she'd give them back to me in the afternoon. She stopped hanging on to them and whatever. So, the big problem came for me not through the schooling stuff. That was just, like a rock skimming over water. The big problem for me came when I got a driver's license, because then I was subject to things like interactions with the police. And I had 4 DUIs, 3 driving whilst disqualified, unlawful use of motor vehicle. I used to get into cars of people I didn't know and just take the cars. And invariably I'd crash, or the police would find me somewhere and I'd be passed out. But there's one time I had a crash in a car that I'd stolen. They found the car on the road that led up to the Bribie Island Bridge. I'd left it in the middle of the road. It wasn't working anymore. There was smoke everywhere. I think it was on fire. Police arrived and they looked around. They ended up getting the spotlight and shining it in through the bushes, and they saw me about 150 metres into the bushes, apparently. I've got no memory of it. Draped over a barbed wire fence. I couldn't work out how, obviously couldn't work out to get past the barbed wire fence, so I just stayed on it, you know. And they brought me back, and I was tripping again, and they were, you know, swatting non-existent butterflies and speaking, you know, just speaking bullshit. Anyway, that was the last time I got pinched. And actually that was the second last time I got pinched. The last time I got pinched, I ended up in Lowson House Psychiatric Centre, and the cops had shown up. My old man was at the end of the bed. By this time, my old man had got clean himself. He was going to AA meetings and stuff. He had 7 years up. And I woke up in the psych centre, and at the foot of my bed was the old man. He said, "Listen, you're okay, you're safe, you're blah, blah, blah." I had cuts all over me where I'd gone through the windscreen or something of another car. And he said, "The cops are outside. They know you were driving that car, and they were going to arrest you. But I've just had a chat with the sergeant, and what he said is he's going to pretend that nobody knows anything about it, but you've got to go and do the next thing that I'm going to suggest. You've got to go with the two blokes that are waiting out there. They're going to take you to a drug rehab. It's in Goulburn, and if you stay there, the cops are going to pretend that they don't know anything about you stealing this car and crashing it up. But if you leave the place at any time before they say you're allowed to leave the place, they'll arrest you again, and you'll probably go back to jail, and you're probably looking at 5 years." He said, "It's up to you. What do you want to do?" So for me, I just did the math. You know, for me, it was 5 years in jail or a year or something in this rehab. So I took the rehab because it was the longest stint, you know. And that's when my life really changed. I wasn't happy about being there. I was resentful about being. I was being forced to go to the rehab, you know, and the last place I wanted to be was in a rehab. But after a little while of sitting there and doing the stuff and interacting with the people, and I woke up one morning and it was a sunny day, hot Brisbane. It was a day off. We were all out in the backyard. There was a barbecue going. There was a gentle breeze, and the palm trees down the back, just, you know, and banana leaves just rocking slightly. There was a guy called Dave on his guitar and singing, you know, singing songs on his guitar. And I just looked around and thought, wow, look at this. And I noticed for the first time probably in my life, literally, I wasn't compelled to run. I wasn't compelled to be on the go. I wasn't compelled to be doing something. I just sat there and I took it all in, and I just felt calm, you know. And that was probably one of the first times in my life where I actually felt like that. I spent my whole life looking over my shoulders, waiting for the next thing that was going to be coming at me. And I was always ready for it. I was always on guard, and I was running 100 miles an hour. And that went on right through the early years of my recovery. I was still run. I started businesses, and I was really a busy business person. You know, I was busy all the time. I was on the phone. I was running here. I was running there. I was doing that. And it was like another drug, you know, because as long as I kept on the run, and as long as I kept busy like that, I didn't have to get in touch with the feelings department. And that was what being on, you know, running around like a lunatic, running a business in recovery. That's what it was all about for me, was not being in touch with what was going on for me at an emotional level. And, you know, I ended up having 4 times a DUI and driving while supply. I ended up doing the jail. I ended up in Hoos, in Goulburn. And that was all by the age of 18. You know, I'd done all of that by the age of 18. And that is a really important part of my story, you know, because there's so many people that have an opportunity to get this at such an early age, and they don't. Some of those people go on to die from drug use and all the stuff that goes along with being a using addict. Some people spend the next 10, 15, 20 years doing the same old shit. I was really lucky in that every time I wanted to leave that place, I had the 5 years of prison sentence hanging over my head. And that's the only thing really that stopped me running down the driveway of this place and leaving. At times, the only thing that kept me there was that I didn't want to go to jail for 5 years. So I stuck it out. And, you know, they've got a saying in the rooms about, you know, you got to hang around and wait for the miracle to happen. And it kind of happened to me slowly but surely over a long period of time. Yeah, and the other thing I just want to touch on too is the people that have come into my life and been so helpful. A lot of them aren't with us anymore. Some of them have died of natural causes. Some of them haven't. Some of them have started using again and died in the process of doing that. And I don't want to be that person. You know, I don't want to be in that situation. When I go out, when my time comes, whether it's in 5 years, 20 years, 100, you know, whatever, I want to go out knowing that I've led the good life, that I've had a good life, that I've been helpful, I haven't harmed, and my kids loved and respected me. You know,
Yep.
I don't want to do the alternative. I don't want that to happen. So, in order to make sure that doesn't happen, I've got to do certain suggested things. You know, I've got to talk when I don't feel like talking. I've got to get to the meetings. I've got to do things like being on your show today. I've got to do all those sorts of things because in doing all of that, somehow miraculously, I manage to stay clean. If I don't do those things, and I've seen lots of people that don't do these things, if I don't do those things, it's only a matter of time before I'm going backwards and I'm out the door. You know, my business partner, I was in Hooves with him. We got clean together in Hooves. We started a business together after we got out, and he at 10 years he went out and had a bottle of wine with his wife, you know, to celebrate 10 years of being clean. You know, and it took him a while, but he died. He died in active addiction, and it all started with that drink of wine, celebrating his 10 years of being clean that he had over a meal with his wife. That's where it started. You know, it ended up years down the track, admittedly, and he just won $1 million house on the Gold Coast. You know, he had $900,000 in the bank, more money than he had in his life, and he's dead.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be like that. So I've got to do the suggested things, whether I like it or not. Sometimes, you know, I've got a meeting that I'm a member of, and I've got to front up because I'm a member. I'm responsible. I've got to front up. And sometimes I just don't want to go to that meeting. You know, I just want to stay home, watch the telly, go and do something else, whatever. But I've got to front up to the meeting, and I just keep doing it. And that's the only consistent thing I've done in my whole recovery is I've just kept fronting up, gone to the meetings, been active in the service structure, although I'm not doing very much now other than just working one-on-one with people that I've taken a fancy to. And somehow miraculously I've been able to stay clean. And it's embarrassing, but I've got to say I've been clean 42 years. I'm 61 years old. I got clean at 18. I've been clean all that time. And, you know, I've made all the mistakes. I've done all the wrong things. I've fucked up lots of things. I had that businesses that I've had. I've made millions of dollars. You know, I still remember being, you know, just got out of Who's, and I still had to report to Bankstown because I was still on parole for previous matters, and I still had to report to Bankstown probation and parole. And there was an alleyway, and at the end of the hallway was the parole office. But on the left, there was a thing, and it had a sign over a little room. It had a sign over vocational guidance. And every time I walked past there, I'd noticed this little old lady sitting there knitting away. And one day I stuck my head in. I said, "What are you doing here exactly?" And I was a bit early, and she said, "Oh, we help people find jobs, better jobs than the ones they've got, or we tell them, you know, what would be a good job for them." And they said, "All you got to do is fill out this form and do this test, and then come back in a week, and we'll let you know." So, okay, so I did that, filled out the form, went and reported Bankstown probation and parole, came back, I think it was 3 weeks later. Every 3 weeks I had to go in and report. And she said, "Well, you know, we've got your test back." And at this time I was working in an arc welding factory, putting arc welders together on a production line with a bunch of Polish people and people that didn't speak English. And, you know, the job wasn't great. And, you know, I was in a position where I was thinking that really I'd like to be doing a better job. So I thought, okay, I'll go and see this little old lady. She said, well, basically, we've done the test and it's come back, and the results are that you put you in the top 2% of society. She said, you can basically do whatever you want. If you want to go and fly jumbo jets for Qantas, all you've got to do, you've just got to go to jumbo jet school. You want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, you want to do this. She said, there's no limits. You've got no limits. You can do whatever you want. All you just got to go and do the study and stuff, whatever it is to get to get there, you know. And I was gobsmacked. I walked out of there, and the interesting thing is, at no point did she show me a bit of paper with the red mark on it and the tick and all the answers. I just ran with it. She could have been lying through her teeth. She might have, you know, the dog might have ate it and she was just, you know, revving me up or whatever. But I ran with it. And the next morning when I went to work, and the bloke came around and said, look, you're not getting that nut on fast enough. You got to, you know, quick, got the whip out. I said, mate, I'm out of here. I'm better than this. And I left. Didn't have a job, didn't have anywhere to go to. But what I had was this faith that things were going to be okay. It was all going to work out, and something would lead to something, and I'd end up being all right. And literally that's what happened, you know. I went and got a job in sales, and I got a better job. And every time I switched jobs, I got a little bit more money and something more attractive conditions. The houses that I was renting and living in with people, because I was in shared accommodation right up until I was 26 or something. And the houses that I shared with people got better and better, and you know, my jobs got better, the money got better, the cars got better, everything in my life just got better and better and better and better. And I ended up going broke in my business, and I lost all the toys that I had, and it was very depressing for a little while. But then I started another business, and that grew exponentially, and until it was 10 times better than the previous business that I was all depressed about. And then that folded after about 12 years. And right now I'm just having a rest, not running any businesses. And my son keeps getting on to me. He says, you know, you should be doing business. You should be doing something. You should be earning more money. And you know, I'm just living a really quiet life at the moment. I haven't got a lot of money, got no money in the bank, haven't got much in the way of assets at all. I'm 42 years clean, and I've got, you know, a lounge, TV, a fridge, washing machine, and a few other bits and pieces, living in the middle of nowhere because the rent here was so cheap. So, you know, I could go back and do all that business stuff and start earning the big money again, and, you know, have the expensive houses living. I pay $250 a week for this house that I'm in, and I'm renting it off somebody, you know, but I'm in the middle of nowhere up the river. You can't get here by car or truck. So I get to choose and be selective about who comes to visit, which is a good thing too. You know, and I think if I remember rightly, you lived not far away from me, just around the corner on Milson Island for a little while.
Yeah, I lived on Milson Island for a couple of years.
Yeah, you should tell that story. That's a ripper.
Yeah. Yeah, Rob touched on
parts of it anyway, maybe not all of it, just parts of it.
Rob touched on a story. There's a prison just around the corner from where Rob lives on the Hawkesbury River called Milson's Island, and I was sentenced to that island many, many, many years ago. And anyway, I got out of Milson Island and got reoffended very quickly and went back to prison and manipulated my way back to the island. And this is when my addiction had started to become really strong. In 1977 it was. And I'd got to the island and I was pretty fit. You know, I always get fit in prison. And one of the guys got some pot in, was smoking some pot, and I had an obsession, a compulsion. I didn't know what they were those days, but I had an obsession, a compulsion to use heroin because I'm a heroin addict. And I came up with a brainy idea that on the island, the prison officer used to lock himself in a room, and then there'd be 60 prisoners walking the island all night. You know, we had dormitories, but there was no one was locked in. I thought I could swim to Brooklyn Bridge, it was only 3 Ks. I could hitchhike into Hornsby, then catch a train to King's Cross, rob some drug dealers, come back, swim back, because I was super fit, swim back to the island. And I could be back. It was, you know, I had a 6-hour window, 7-hour window. So, you know, I'd smoked some pot, got the obsession, the compulsion, pushed myself off the halfway through the island, you know, right in the middle there, there's a little wharf there, and I dive off the wharf, and I had a plastic bag wrapped around my waist with clean clothes, some cigarettes, and some money, because I'd gone and seen all the guys and got guys to put in, you know, because I was going to score. But I miscalculated one important thing, and Rob laughed about, you know, preparation and planning. I prepared, I had me clean clothes, but I didn't plan it. And when I dived in, I didn't know that it was an incoming tide. So what was a 3-kilometre swim took me 6 hours because the tide comes in there so quickly. And if I'd stopped swimming, I'd go backwards. And I'm full of marijuana, so I'm full of pot, so I'm already paranoid. There's a lot of big bull sharks in that river, which scared the shit out of me. And I had this garbage bag full of air and clothes in it. And every now and again, the bag would touch me on the leg. And I'd freak out. And I'd go, oh, is that a shark, you know? So cut a long story short, I swam from Milson's Island to Brooklyn Bridge, hitchhiked into the city, robbed the drug dealer as soon as I got there. By that time, it was already 7 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. I was already an escapee because they'd done a muster at 7 o'clock, so I was missing at the muster. And I went on my merry way of being a drug addict and got arrested 21 days later in King's Cross, running from the police who weren't chasing me because I was on a drug called Ritalin. And I'd gone into psychosis, kidnapped a taxi driver at knife point. Oh, it was horrific. That was my escape from prison, my incredible planning, precision, precise escape from prison, you know. And we laugh about it all the time. You know, I say to Rob, I used to live on the Hawkesbury. It was lovely. And it was lovely, you know, there's beautiful fish and crabs, but the last time I came off that island was horrific, you know. And the nice thing, you know, that's 1977. And 4 years later, I ended up in a rehab and Rob was there, and Rob had been there longer than I had. And I went straight into a special group. And I remember Rob coming home. They used to wake us up at 2 o'clock in the morning to clean up, you know, if the group was naughty. And I remember there was another guy there called Colin Slack. And he was an English guy, and he'd woken me up at 2 o'clock 3 days in a row. And I went and got a knife out of the kitchen to go and kill him in his bed, because I was going to stab him in his bed for getting me out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning to clean the office. And I was a little bit damaged, you know. Rob's probably one of the few people who knows how sick I was when I got there. You know, I just come out of prison. I went straight from prison to the rehab, you know. So Rob could probably tell you better than what I could even tell you of how mixed up I was and how confused I was. You know, I was incredibly crazy, but I did want to stop using drugs. I did have the desire, even though I didn't have the information. I had the desire to stop using drugs. You know, I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was sick and tired of going, because to me, drugs meant prison, and I was sick and tired of prison. You know, I was just been in prison my whole life. The 10 years prior to going to rehab, I'd spent nearly all of that in prison. And I'd get out for short periods of time, you know, but I was using heroin. I was a heroin addict back when it was sociably cool to be a heroin addict. You know, when I say sociably cool, the Rolling Stones were singing about brown sugar. You know, Eric Clapton was, you know, singing about cocaine, and, you know, Lou Reed was singing about heroin. You know, it makes me feel like a man when I put that spike into my vein. Things aren't quite the same. And that was me, you know. That was, once I put that spike into my vein, things weren't quite the same. But Rob doesn't even really know this, but he had a very big impact on me. He's a lot younger than me, Rob. I'm 68, he's 61. And those days, he was only a 19-year-old kid, you know, and I'm a hardened street goose who thought he was a gangster, just come straight from prison. And there's this little 19-year-old kid yelling at me. And I remember he came out, I was in the group, and he said, "The infamous Mr. Isherwood, we've been waiting for you to come." I'll never forget it. I didn't even know what the word infamous meant. That was the worst part. I didn't know what it meant. And I had to find out what it meant. I don't know if he's insult me or give me a rap, you know. But yeah, that was in 1981, you know. And Rob and I have been mates for a long time. My daughters were bridesmaids at his wedding.
That's true.
They're 40-year-old today, Rob.
Yeah, I know. I saw that.
Yeah, they're 40-year-old today, those kids. They were little babies when they went to your wedding. You know, they were probably
Unbelievable.
6, 7 years of age when they...
The miracle of it is that you and I are still here and we can talk about that.
Exactly, you know. I remember you having your baby, and, you know, and I remember your companies, and then you touched on Mark, your first business partner, you know. And I remember when he relapsed, he used to come down to Double Bay, down to the beach down there a lot. And he used to always justify me about him drinking.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, I'm drinking now, but I've got it under control. I'd say, Mark, I don't care. I don't care about your drinking, buddy. It's none of my business. It doesn't concern me. No, but he was always justifying, oh, no, I haven't got a problem with the drink, Ron. I'd say, mate, I don't care. And then I heard that he started snorting coke, and his life had really spiraled out of control. And I thought, wow, but for the grace of God, there go I.
I just wish I could have done more than I was able to. I you know, if you had your magic wand, you could wave your magic wand and just save a life. You know, if there's one thing I've learned, and that is that I have to allow people to do whatever the fuck it is they want to do. And if they don't want to do what I think they should do, that's a problem for me. That's not a problem for them. People 100%. Can do whatever the fuck they want. But you know, the thing is, what I do try to do with people that are using or started using again or whatever, what I do is tell them that I love them, tell them that I'm here to support them and help them in any way that I can. I don't care if they're using. I don't care if they're clean. If I can be helpful, just get in touch with me.
Yeah.
You know, and that's worked really well with quite a few people, because they've come back and they said, look, you weren't judgmental. You kept the door open. I need some help. This is what I think I need to do. Are you able to help me do this shit? You know, and the answer to that is, yeah, I can do that. So, instead of closing stuff down nowadays, I try to keep the door open and allow people the opportunity of coming forward when they're ready. And if they want to go through that process, yeah, I'm willing to help them go through that process as best as I can. And, that's what I was saying before. My son keeps saying to me, you got to get into a business, you got to start making bank again. You're living up in the middle in the river, you're fucking penniless and whatever. I said, what for? So that I can work for the next 20 years, work like a dog, run at 100 miles an hour, get stressed out, and eventually retire somewhere where I can sit by the river and relax.
And do it now.
Which is what I'm doing right now. So I don't want to go into all that again. I've had my spin with the money side of things and with the business side of things. I don't want to do that again.
I remember the boy 007.
Yeah, well, that was a Christmas present from my ex-wife.
I remember that.
I couldn't, I got the number plates under the Christmas tree, fucking boy 007 on number plates.
I loved them on the Jag. It was
a bit like Johnny Cash and the boy named Sue. I can't tell you how many times I got into trouble with those plates. People, giving me a rise over them. Fucking boy 007. Fuck, every day I nearly had to word somebody about that.
Mine weren't much better. Next.
Yeah, I remember that too. What was that, a Camaro or something?
Next. Anyway, that plate.
I think another turning point for me was when I bumped into Mario, and you've interviewed Mario on one of your shows.
Yeah.
I was in Who's with Mario too, just like you were, and I bumped into Mario at an AA meeting, and he told me he was going to start an AA meeting, him and Derek and a bloke called Dave that I hadn't met. Yes. And I said, oh, yeah, when's that? And he said, Wednesday, blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, okay, I'll be there. I've been going ever since. I don't go to AA meetings anymore, not for any reason. I can fit in an AA meeting just as well as I can fit into an NA meeting. I've got no issues. But I've just been doing NA now for, over 40 or 39 years or whatever it is.
It's 40 years ago.
And I went to that first meeting at Waverley. I got involved in the service structure. It was one meeting, then it was two, then it was four, then it was six. Now there's hundreds of meetings, you know what I mean? Yeah, so at no point then when I did all of that, at no point then did I know that I was setting up a structure that was going to support me for the rest of my life. All I was doing was trying to help other addicts that still suffered, and I went to the meetings and talked and said my bit.
Yeah, that was my meeting.
For 42 years. And the only thing that I've done right is I haven't picked up one day at a time. The only single thing that I've done right is I haven't started using again. I've made all the other mistakes. I've chased money. I've done a bit of gambling here and there and lost money, and I lost money in business. I've trusted the wrong people, and I've had my fingers burnt, and been married, been divorced. I've had a really good life, really, when I think about it. Much better than I would have had if I had been allowed to just keep doing what I was doing. I think I'd be dead for sure, because most of my friends that I was using with back then, most of them are dead. They're not here anymore. And the few that are still around, probably aren't doing so well. So as a result of all the hardship that I faced, going into Who's, getting out, going to probation and parole, doing everything that I've done, and as a result of all of that stuff, I had to make choices then and there, and turn left, turn right, turn left, turn right. And I've ended up having a pretty good life, in the big scheme of things. I know what it's like to have a lot of money. I know what it's like to have none. I know what it's like to have a lot of money and then have none. That's not pretty, but it's not going to kill me. I had a big argument today with with Coles about a delivery they were supposed to do last night. And I was talking to you about it just before I came on. And on the one hand, I'm ropeable and I'm really cranky with them and stuff. And then after I got cranky with them and I swore at them on the phone and stuff, I was able to think, you're a fucking idiot. It's a first world problem. I'm not on my way in the back of a prison van. I'm not getting locked up. I'm not on my way to hospital with some, thing that's wrong with me right now. I'm everything, all my health conditions and all the stuff. And I've got a few going on, but they're all pretty well managed at the moment. And if I died today, I reckon there's nothing I would want for at this point, other than to make sure my kids were going to be happy and live long lives themselves. But, there's nothing I need right now. I don't need money. I don't need the business. I don't need a fancier car than the one I've got. I'm just content. And isn't that what I wanted when I first started going to? I just wanted to get to a place where I could be content, and I've got that. And it's without the money and it's without any of the other stuff. I'm just content within myself and happy within myself. I love doing this recovery stuff, and I love talking to other people, and so doing this show. It's a bit embarrassing too, but I've got a message. I've got to carry a message. My life depends on me being able to carry a message. It's the one thing that I think has held me in good stead all these years.
Yeah, 100%. And you can only keep what you got by giving it away.
I really like that Rat Park thing. You heard the thing about Rat Park.
Yeah.
And they found that if they put the heroin laced water and the non-heroin laced water, if the rats were all surrounded with other little rats, girl rats, boy rats, and toys to play with, whatever, they didn't use the heroin laced water. In fact, they never touched it.
Yep.
But if you put them in there alone and leave them isolated, which is what the cornerstone of addiction is for me, it's a disease of isolation.
Yep.
They go straight to that and they keep drinking it until they're dead. Yeah. And that's just
I'm
just like a little rat. I'm a little rat, but I'm surrounding myself with people and I'm playing with all the fun toys.
Yeah. See, when we went to that rehab, for me, when I went to that rehab 41 years ago, people say to me, "What did you get out of the rehab the first time you ever went?" I said, "I got the therapeutic value of one each helping the other."
Yeah.
That's what I got. I didn't get the 12 steps. I didn't get the 12 traditions. I didn't get a spiritual awakening, but I did get a spiritual awakening because I got in contact with my actual soul, because my contact with people was always on a head level. What can I get from you? Are you an enemy? Are you a friend? Are you an asset? Are you a liability? I would judge you on that level. And on that level, I would work out how close I would let you come to me, but you would never get anywhere near my soul. No. I couldn't even love a woman, because a woman to me was going to be a weakness to me, because somebody could get to me through that woman. That's why I couldn't love, and I've only learned all that stuff through working the steps and writing the program. And, you mentioned Mario before. Mario has been my sponsor for 36 years and 8 months. That's a long time to have the one sponsor. I don't even call him a sponsor. He's my spiritual advisor. Yeah. And that guy taught me how to love. He taught me how to be a friend. He taught me how to be a father. Well, Frankie really taught me a lot of that stuff too. Frankie's my brother. I love Frankie. He's, I'm going to cry. He is my brother. He is my brother. Every time that my life's been at its lowest, Frank's been there.
Yeah.
Every time. When I relapsed in 85, he'd come up the cross every week. And he'd track me down. He'd say, "You had enough, brother?" I go, "No, mate." He'd say, "See you next week." And he'd fuck off. Come up the next week, him and Rhonda. "You had enough, mate?" Go, "No, not yet, mate." He'd say, "See you next week." As soon as I said, "Yeah, I had enough," he took me straight to Langton, and I jumped off 120 Milladone. And him and Wayne come and see me in Langton. He said, "What are you going to do, mate?" Because I'd split up with the twins' mother and all that shit and all the madness. And I said, "I'll go to a men's hostel." And they said, "No, you're not. You're going to come and stay at our place." I was still detoxing off the methadone. So I'd have 3 days at Frankie's. Then I'd have 3 days at Wayne's and 3 days at Frankie's, because they couldn't put up with me any more than 3 days. I was fucking mad. But that's the gifts that I got, was the connection. And that's what recovery is. Recovery is connection. You and I don't see each other a great deal often, but the minute we do, hello, mate, it's like we never not seen each other.
It's true.
Yeah.
And this is coming from a bloke that never knew how to have a relationship until I got clean. I never knew how to have, that sort of relationship with other people at all.
Especially men.
Especially men.
I was horrified at who's when they try to cuddle me. Like,
oh yeah, give you a man hug.
I'm not hugging a man.
Yeah, no, I had a hard time with that too.
I want to punch you. I don't want to fucking, I want to have sex with all the girls and I want to punch all the men. No, I did both of those. The only thing I didn't do in hers was use drugs.
Yeah.
And that was the only thing that was promised him, was freedom from active addiction.
Well, mate, ain't life grand, eh? When you look at it in the big scheme of things and how things have turned out. You're doing all right, you're doing okay.
Yeah, we're blessed.
But the people that are doing okay are the people that do the suggested things. And that's the message I want to get across. It
100%.
doesn't matter how young you are, it doesn't matter how old you are. My old man didn't get to AA until he was something like 45 and he died with 27 years up.
Yep.
He died from liver cancer. But, he got to AA and stuff after he was 40. Because of him, I got to it at 18 and I've had the life that I've had.
Yeah, one of my daughters is 15 years clean. What a wonderful gift. At least our kids had it. They knew that there was somewhere to come, the same as you knew where there was somewhere to come. And that's what I believe we have a major obligation as a recovering addict, alcoholic, to carry this message to the addict who still suffers.
Yes, we do, and the benefit and the positive side of the even more positive side of that is, as a result of doing that stuff and carrying the message, we get to feel and we get to stay clean ourselves.
Exactly, and we get the rewards. I say to people I look after, they all thank me. I say, mate, you got no idea how much you saved me.
Yeah.
You're saving me from myself.
That's true.
Yeah. While I'm worrying about you, I'm not worrying about me. All right, brother. It's been a pleasure having you on, Rob.
Is there anything else you wanted me to touch on?
Just my backside.
Not now, not ever, mate. Not now, not ever.
Not now. Don't say never, mate. Never say never. All right, brother. I love you, mate. I really, really appreciate you coming on our show. The Truth About Addiction. The truth is that you can watch this podcast and never have to use again.
Ain't that the truth?
If you ever see Rob somewhere, say hello. Put your hand out, mate. He'll shake it.
Yeah, 0457 222 880. You need never use again. Ring that number if you're about to go and use, and we'll talk it through.
Yeah, beautiful, mate. I love you, Robbie. You be safe. Have a safe Christmas. A happy New Year, mate. And I hope to catch up with you in the New Year, brother.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it, mate.
I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.